She'll come, Marcus Whitmore said with a smirk, lifting his champagne glass as laughter rolled across the private dining room. People like Monica always come, especially when they have nothing left. More laughter followed. Investors, executives, socialites, and friends crowded around the table inside one of the most expensive hotels in the city. His wedding was only days away, and somehow the favorite topic of conversation wasn't the bride. It was his homeless ex-wife. "You actually invited her?" one man asked. "Of course I did," Marcus replied. "How often do you get to show people the difference between winning and losing?" A woman near the window shook her head with a laugh. "That's cruel." "No," Marcus said. "Cruel would be pretending she still belongs in the same room as us." The room erupted again. Nobody defended Monica. Nobody questioned him. To them, she was already a story with a sad ending. A woman who had fallen behind. A woman who had failed. A woman who no longer mattered. Across the city, Monica sat alone on a weathered bench outside a shelter, the cream-colored envelope resting in her hands. The gold lettering reflected the afternoon sun. "Marcus Whitmore and Olivia Sinclair request the honor of your presence." Most people would have thrown it away. Most people would have cried. Monica simply stared at it. Her expression never changed. That was the first thing Marcus got wrong. Because the woman he believed was broken had stopped breaking a long time ago. He just didn't know it yet. And neither did anyone else sitting around that table, laughing at her name. Marcus believed he was inviting her to witness his victory. He had no idea he was inviting the biggest mistake of his life through the front door. Back at the hotel, the conversation continued. "Do you think she'll actually show up?" someone asked. "If she does," another man said, "I'll pay to see her face when she realizes what she lost." Marcus grinned. "Trust me, the only thing she'll realize is that she was never important." More laughter. More nods. More people treating Monica like a punchline. None of them knew the truth. None of them knew that somewhere beyond their view, pieces were already moving. Pieces Marcus couldn't see. Pieces he couldn't control. Pieces that would soon turn every confident smile in that room into silence. The strange part was that Monica almost felt grateful for the invitation. Not because she wanted to see Marcus. Not because she cared about the wedding. And certainly not because she missed the life he took from her. She was grateful because sometimes the people who hurt you the most unknowingly create the stage for their own downfall. Marcus thought the story ended 3 years ago. Monica knew it hadn't. Years earlier, when Marcus was struggling to keep his first business alive, Monica had stood beside him through every rejection letter, every unpaid bill, every sleepless night. She believed in him before anyone else did. She defended him when others laughed. She sacrificed opportunities that could have changed her own future because she believed they were building something together. Then success arrived. Money arrived. Recognition arrived. And Marcus changed. The woman who once stood beside him became someone he tried to hide. The sacrifices he once praised became invisible. By the time the divorce papers arrived, Marcus acted as though she had contributed nothing at all. The marriage ended. The respect ended. The life she knew disappeared. But Marcus made one fatal assumption. He assumed Monica's story ended when it stopped benefiting him. He was wrong. Very wrong. Monica folded the invitation carefully and slipped it back into the envelope. Nearby, people passed without noticing her. To them she looked ordinary. To Marcus, she looked defeated. But appearances were dangerous things, especially when someone was working very hard to protect them. Far away, preparations for the wedding continued. Guest lists were finalized. Security plans were reviewed. Luxury cars were reserved. Marcus enjoyed every moment of it. He imagined Monica walking into the ballroom alone. He imagined the whispers, the stares, the humiliation. He imagined proving to everyone that he had made the right choice by leaving her behind. What he never imagined was that she would not walk into that ballroom the way he expected. He never imagined that people far more powerful than himself already knew her name. He never imagined that the woman he planned to embarrass would become the most important person in the room. And he certainly never imagined that before the wedding was over, He would be the one standing alone while everyone else looked away. Monica rose from the bench and looked once more at the gold seal on the envelope. A faint smile touched her lips. It wasn't the smile of someone seeking revenge. It was the smile of someone who already knew a secret the rest of the world hadn't discovered yet. Then she slipped the invitation into her bag and started walking. Because in just a few days, Marcus Whitmore would learn something he should have understood years ago. The woman he invited to humiliate was not the woman who would arrive. Long before magazine covers called Marcus Whitmore a visionary, before investors fought for a seat at his table, and before luxury hotels competed to host his events, there was a cramped apartment above a laundromat where the future looked anything but certain. The ceiling leaked when it rained. The refrigerator rattled through the night. Some weeks they counted quarters just to buy groceries. Yet whenever Marcus doubted himself, Monica was the one who refused to let him quit. She worked double shifts, came home exhausted, and still sat beside him while he sketched business plans across stacks of unpaid bills. When banks rejected him, she encouraged him. When potential investors laughed at him, she reminded him why he started. When everyone else saw risk, Monica saw possibility. Marcus used to tell people that she was his lucky charm. He used to introduce her proudly. He used to say none of it would happen without her. Those memories felt almost unreal now. Because the man preparing for a multi-million-dollar wedding seemed like a stranger compared to the one Monica once loved. Success had not arrived all at once. It came in small victories. A contract here, a partnership there. Then a major breakthrough changed everything. Suddenly Marcus was being invited into rooms that once ignored him. Wealthy executives returned his calls. Business magazines wanted interviews. Expensive restaurants reserved tables under his name. And little by little, something inside him began to shift. At first Monica barely noticed. Then she started noticing the excuses. The canceled dinners. The events she was not invited to attend. The way Marcus corrected her in front of other people. The way he became strangely uncomfortable whenever conversations turned toward the early days of the company. It was subtle at first. Then it became impossible to ignore. One evening, after a charity gala, Monica stood beside him as a group of investors discussed the company. One man asked how Marcus had survived those difficult first years. Marcus smiled. Hard work and a little luck, he answered. Monica waited for him to mention the sacrifices they had made together. He never did. The conversation moved on. The investors nodded. Monica remained silent. It should have been a small moment. Instead, it felt like the beginning of something much worse. As Marcus climbed higher, Monica seemed to disappear from the story he told about himself. New friends entered his life. Powerful friends. Influential friends. People who cared about status, appearances, and connections. Monica noticed how differently they treated her. She noticed the polite smiles, the dismissive glances, the assumptions. To them, she was not part of Marcus's success. She was simply someone who happened to be standing nearby. Marcus never defended her. Sometimes he even joined them. Looking back, Monica realized the betrayal did not begin with the divorce. It began when Marcus stopped seeing her value. The divorce was only the final chapter. A cold wind swept through the city as Monica walked along the sidewalk, the wedding invitation tucked safely inside her bag. The memories should have hurt more than they did. Instead, they felt distant, like scenes from a movie she had watched years ago. She paused beside a storefront window. Her reflection stared back at her. To strangers, she looked ordinary. To Marcus, she looked defeated. But appearances had always been his weakness. He judged value by what he could see. That was why he never noticed what was happening beyond his field of vision. Across town, Marcus sat in a private meeting with several executives discussing final wedding arrangements and future business opportunities. The conversation eventually drifted toward Monica again. "Are you worried she might cause a scene?" someone asked. Marcus laughed. "Monica? No. She never liked attention." Another executive smirked. "Then why invite her at all?" Marcus leaned back in his chair. "Because some lessons deserve an audience." The men around him chuckled. Marcus enjoyed every second of it. The confidence, the control, The certainty. He still believed the story belonged to him. He still believed Monica was trapped in the past. What Marcus did not know was that somewhere else, another conversation had taken place earlier that morning. A conversation involving his name. A conversation involving people he had never met. A conversation that ended with a simple statement. Everything is prepared. Monica's phone vibrated softly inside her pocket. She looked at the screen for only a moment before locking it again. No smile. No reaction. Just quiet understanding. Then she continued walking. Because while Marcus spent his days planning a celebration, forces he knew nothing about were already moving into position. And for the first time in years, the future was moving faster than the past. Meanwhile, Marcus was about to make a discovery that would shake the foundation of everything he believed. The first sign appeared less than 24 hours later, hidden inside a business report that landed unexpectedly on his desk. Marcus stared at the report for several seconds before setting it back on his desk. "What is this?" he asked. The executive across from him adjusted his glasses. "A market analysis. It came in this morning." Marcus flipped through the pages again. One name appeared repeatedly. A company that seemed to be expanding faster than anyone expected. A company with unusual influence across several industries. A company that had quietly secured contracts many larger competitors wanted. "Who owns it?" Marcus asked. "Nobody knows," the executive replied. "The ownership structure is private." Marcus frowned. In his world, information was power. Powerful people left footprints. Wealth left records. Success left clues. Yet the more he searched through the report, the less he understood. The company seemed to appear everywhere and nowhere at the same time. "Interesting," Marcus said before tossing the report aside. "Not important." The meeting continued, but the question lingered in the back of his mind. Meanwhile, Monica sat in a small coffee shop several miles away. Rain tapped gently against the windows while customers hurried through the afternoon rush. She stirred her coffee without drinking it. Her attention rested on a newspaper folded beside her. Marcus's engagement photo occupied nearly half the page. The article described him as one of the city's most admired entrepreneurs. Monica read the headline once and pushed the paper away. Years ago it would have hurt. Now it felt strangely distant. The woman sitting in that coffee shop no longer measured her worth through Marcus's success. Yet seeing his face still brought back memories she could not completely erase. She remembered the promises, the sacrifices, the nights spent encouraging him when failure seemed inevitable. She remembered believing they were building a future together. The hardest part was not that Marcus left. The hardest part was realizing he had rewritten the past afterward. He convinced himself that he reached the top alone. He convinced everyone else too. The truth had become inconvenient. So he buried it. Outside, a luxury SUV slowed near the curb before continuing down the street. Monica barely glanced up. She seemed calm, ordinary, invisible. Yet the waitress behind the counter noticed something unusual. Throughout the afternoon, several people entered the coffee shop, looked around briefly, then left without speaking to anyone. Monica never acknowledged them. She simply continued reading a book resting beside her coffee cup. Across town, Marcus prepared for another public appearance. Cameras flashed as he entered a charity fundraiser. Wealthy donors filled the ballroom. Politicians mingled with executives. The event should have been routine. Instead, Marcus noticed something unexpected. A familiar conversation surfaced again and again. The same mysterious company from the report. "Have you heard about them?" One investor asked another. "Everyone wants a meeting." "Good luck getting one," his companion replied. "Apparently they reject most requests." Marcus listened without joining the discussion. A strange irritation settled over him. He was accustomed to being the center of attention. Yet tonight another name seemed to dominate the room. A company nobody could fully explain. A company with influence powerful enough to attract people who rarely chased anyone. "Who runs it?" Marcus finally asked. The investor shrugged. "That is the question everyone wants answered." Marcus forced a smile. "Then someone will answer it eventually." But for the first time, Uncertainty touched the edges of his confidence. Only slightly, barely enough to notice. Still, it was there. Later that evening, Monica returned to the shelter. The invitation remained tucked safely inside her bag. Several residents gathered around an old television in the common room. Marcus appeared on the screen during an interview. The host praised his achievements. Marcus smiled modestly. Monica watched silently from across the room. Then, the host asked a question that made her pause. "What is the greatest decision you ever made in business?" Marcus leaned back and laughed. "Learning to let go of things that were holding me back." The audience applauded. Monica understood exactly what he meant. So did nobody else. For a brief moment, sadness flickered across her face. Not because his words hurt, because they revealed how completely he had convinced himself of his own version of history. He truly believed she had been the burden. He truly believed success began when she disappeared. That belief would make what came next even harder for him. Monica stood and left the room before the interview ended. Outside, the evening air felt cool and clean. Her phone vibrated again. This time she answered. "Everything is moving on schedule," a calm voice said. Monica looked toward the city skyline glowing against the night sky. "Good," she replied. "No changes." "None." A pause followed. "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" Monica smiled faintly. "I am not going for him." The person on the other end seemed to understand immediately. "Then we will be ready." The call ended. Monica slipped the phone into her pocket and continued walking. Somewhere across the city, Marcus celebrated another successful day, completely unaware that events had already begun shifting beyond his control. And by the next morning, he would discover that the mysterious company appearing in every conversation had just become connected to one of the most important deals of his career. The next morning, Marcus arrived at headquarters expecting an ordinary day. Instead, he found 3 senior executives already waiting outside the conference room. Their expressions immediately caught his attention. "What happened?" Marcus asked as he loosened his tie. One of them handed over a folder. "The Harbor Ridge Project." Marcus stopped walking. Harbor Ridge was not just another contract. It was one of the largest development opportunities his company had pursued in years. Winning it would strengthen his position across the entire region. Losing it would create questions investors would not like asking. He opened the folder and quickly scanned the documents. The project had not been canceled. It had not been delayed. Something far stranger had happened. A newly emerging corporate group had quietly acquired a controlling interest in several key assets connected to the development. The same mysterious organization that kept appearing in market reports. The same organization nobody seemed able to identify. Marcus frowned. "Who authorized this?" "Everything was legal," one executive replied. "The acquisitions happened months ago. Then find out who they are." "We have tried." Marcus looked up. "Try harder." The room fell silent. Nobody argued. Nobody wanted to tell him that dozens of powerful firms had already attempted the same thing without success. Throughout the afternoon, Marcus became increasingly irritated. Every conversation seemed to circle back to the same subject. Every industry newsletter mentioned the same organization. Every analyst seemed fascinated by a company whose leadership remained hidden from public view. It made no sense. In Marcus's experience, successful people wanted recognition. They wanted interviews, awards, publicity, influence. Whoever controlled this growing empire appeared to want none of those things. That alone made him suspicious. Across the city, Monica spent the day volunteering at a community center several blocks from the shelter. Most people there knew very little about her. They saw a quiet woman who helped organize supplies, served meals, and listened when others needed someone to talk to. Nobody treated her like a failure. Nobody treated her like a celebrity. They simply treated her like a person. Monica preferred it that way. An elderly woman named Ruth smiled as Monica carried several boxes into a storage room. "You seem happier lately," Ruth said. Monica laughed softly. "Do I?" "You do." Ruth lowered her voice. "Something good is coming, isn't it?" Monica paused. For a brief moment, she considered answering honestly. Instead, she smiled. Maybe. Ruth nodded as though that was enough. Sometimes it was. Later that afternoon, Monica walked back toward the shelter. The city moved around her in its usual rhythm. Car horns, construction crews, people rushing between appointments. Yet beneath the ordinary sounds of the day, a quiet certainty remained inside her. The wedding was approaching. So was the moment Marcus had spent years unknowingly preparing for. Not because she wanted revenge, not because she wanted to embarrass him, but because some truths eventually demand to be seen. 3 years earlier, the truth had been buried beneath legal documents and public narratives. Marcus controlled the headlines. Marcus controlled the money. Marcus controlled the story. Monica controlled nothing. At least that was how it appeared. She still remembered the final day of the divorce. The courthouse hallway felt colder than she expected. Lawyers moved in and out of offices carrying stacks of paperwork. Marcus barely looked at her. He seemed impatient, as though ending their marriage was simply another task on his calendar. "This is the best outcome for everyone," he told her. Monica stared at him. "Everyone." Marcus sighed. "You will move on. I will move on." The words sounded rehearsed. Professional. Detached. Monica realized then that he had already rewritten their history. In his version of events, she had become a problem he solved rather than a person he once loved. The memory still hurt. Not because she missed him, because she remembered how easily he discarded everything they built together. Back in the present, Monica reached into her bag and touched the edge of the invitation. Only a few days remained. Somewhere else in the city, Marcus sat alone in his office long after most employees had gone home. The Harbor Ridge documents remained spread across his desk. The deeper he investigated, the more frustrated he became. Every trail ended at another layer of privacy. Every answer created new questions. Finally, he closed the file and leaned back in his chair. For the first time in years, uncertainty lingered in the room with him. His phone buzzed. A message from one of his advisors appeared on the screen. "We found another connection." Marcus immediately opened the attachment. His eyes narrowed. The mysterious organization had just scheduled a private meeting in the city. The guest list remained confidential. The location remained confidential. But one detail stood out. The meeting was scheduled for the exact same day as his wedding. Marcus stared at the screen. Then slowly, for reasons he could not explain, he thought about Monica. The thought lingered with Marcus longer than he wanted to admit. He told himself it was coincidence. The timing of the private meeting meant nothing. The mysterious organization had nothing to do with Monica. Yet the image of her face kept returning unexpectedly. By the following afternoon, he pushed the distraction aside and focused on wedding preparations. Unfortunately for Monica, the city had become very small once Marcus became successful. Their paths crossed more often than most people realized. Not because she followed him, because powerful people tended to gather in the same parts of town. One rainy evening nearly 2 years earlier, Monica had been standing beneath the awning of a grocery store, waiting for the weather to pass. She had only a few dollars in her pocket. Her coat was worn. Her shoes had seen better days. She was tired, cold, and trying to decide whether she should spend her remaining money on food or save it for bus fare. Then a black luxury sedan pulled up to the curb. The rear door opened. Marcus stepped out. For a brief moment their eyes met. Monica still remembered it clearly. Not because she expected kindness, because she realized immediately that he felt none. Marcus looked at her as though he were looking at a stranger. Worse than a stranger. He looked relieved. Relieved that her life appeared exactly as he imagined. "Monica," he said. "Marcus." Rain continued falling between them. "You do not look well," he observed. Monica almost laughed at the obviousness of the statement. Instead, she nodded. "I am managing." Marcus glanced toward the store entrance where several people had already noticed the interaction. "You should have made better choices." The words landed harder than he intended, or perhaps exactly as he intended. Monica never asked him for help, never asked for money, never asked for sympathy. Yet he still found a way to remind her that he believed her circumstances were her own fault. "Have a good evening, Marcus," she said quietly. Then she walked away. What she did not see was the small crowd watching from nearby. What she did not hear were the whispers that followed after she disappeared around the corner. Some people recognized Marcus immediately. Others searched his name online. Within hours, photos of the encounter appeared across social media. Nobody posted them because Monica mattered. They posted them because Marcus did. Comments flooded in. Most were cruel. Some mocked her appearance. Others speculated about her life. A few treated her entire situation like entertainment. Marcus never publicly commented. He did not need to. The damage was already done. Monica became a story people consumed for a few minutes before moving on. But she never forgot. Not because of the embarrassment. Because it taught her something important. The people celebrating success were often the same people eager to mock failure. Months later, another encounter happened. This time outside a downtown restaurant. Marcus was entertaining clients. Monica happened to be passing by when one of his associates recognized her. "Is that your ex-wife?" the man asked loudly. Several others turned to look. Marcus glanced toward Monica and smirked. Life is all about decisions. Laughter followed. Not explosive laughter. Not cruel enough to make headlines. Just enough to remind Monica exactly where she stood in their eyes. She kept walking without saying a word. That was what frustrated Marcus most. She never argued, never begged, never tried to defend herself. She simply endured it and moved forward. Over time, Marcus convinced himself that her silence meant defeat. He never considered another possibility. Back in the present, wedding guests continued arriving from across the country. Expensive gifts filled hotel storage rooms. Floral arrangements transformed ballrooms. Luxury vehicles lined private entrances. Excitement spread through Marcus's social circle. Yet among the conversations about seating charts and guest lists, Monica remained a source of amusement. During a private dinner, one guest laughed and asked, "Do you think she still owns anything nice enough to wear?" Another replied, "Maybe she will borrow something from a thrift store." The table erupted with laughter. Olivia joined in. "At least she will finally see what success looks like." Marcus raised his glass. "She already has." More laughter followed. None of them realized that every joke increased the price of the lesson waiting for them. Across town, Monica sat alone on a bench outside the shelter. Her phone buzzed softly. A message appeared on the screen. "Everything remains on schedule." Monica stared at the words for a moment before placing the phone back into her pocket. Nearby, a television visible through a storefront window displayed coverage of Marcus's upcoming wedding. Reporters discussed celebrity guests, business leaders, and high-profile attendees. Monica watched silently. Then she stood and continued walking. She did not know that only hours earlier another video had begun circulating among local business circles. A video containing old footage of her standing outside that grocery store in the rain while Marcus walked away. People shared it as a joke, as proof of success, as evidence of what happened to people who fell behind. The video reached thousands of viewers before sunset. One of those viewers watched it carefully, then made a phone call. Less than 30 minutes later, that call reached someone with the power to make entire boardrooms pay attention. And for the first time, Monica's name entered a conversation where Marcus Whitmore was not the most important person being discussed. The wedding was now only 2 days away, and Marcus had never felt more certain that everything was under control. The ballroom had been transformed into a showcase of wealth and influence. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings. Imported flowers arrived by the truckload. Private chefs finalized menus. Security teams reviewed guest lists. Every detail reflected the image Marcus wanted the world to see. Success, power, victory. During a private planning dinner, he sat surrounded by friends, investors, and members of Olivia's family. The atmosphere was relaxed, almost celebratory. Then someone brought up Monica again. "I still cannot believe she said yes," one guest laughed. "Neither can I," another replied. "Honestly, I thought she would be too embarrassed to show up." Olivia smiled as she adjusted the diamond bracelet on her wrist. "Maybe she misses the attention." Several people laughed. Marcus leaned back comfortably in his chair. She is coming because people always want one last look at the life they lost. More laughter spread around the table. One man raised his glass. To good decisions. The group echoed the toast. Nobody noticed the event coordinator standing nearby looking uncomfortable. She had overheard enough of the conversation to understand exactly why Monica had been invited. It was not kindness. It was not closure. It was entertainment. Marcus wanted an audience. He wanted witnesses. He wanted everyone to see the contrast between his life and hers. The coordinator quietly excused herself and walked away. Some things sounded uglier when spoken out loud. Across town, Monica sat alone in a quiet library reading room. She had chosen the location because nobody paid attention to her there. Her phone rested beside a stack of books. The screen lit up briefly with a new message. Final confirmations completed. Monica read the message and locked the screen again. A young student seated nearby glanced over curiously. To anyone watching, she appeared completely ordinary. There was nothing about her appearance that suggested importance. Nothing that attracted attention. That was exactly how she preferred it. For years, people had underestimated her. Soon they would understand the cost of that mistake. Meanwhile, the video from the grocery store continued spreading online. Thousands of viewers watched the short clip showing Monica standing in the rain while Marcus walked away. Most comments mocked her. Some praised Marcus. Others treated the entire situation like a lesson about success and failure. Yet something unexpected was happening beneath the surface. Not everyone found the video amusing. Some viewers recognized Monica. Others recognized details that most people missed. Questions quietly began circulating among individuals who rarely participated in public discussions. Questions about timing. Questions about history. Questions about why a woman who appeared forgotten continued attracting attention from people who should not have known her name. That same evening, Marcus attended a pre-wedding gathering at a private rooftop venue overlooking the city skyline. Expensive suits filled the room. Conversations revolved around investments, acquisitions, and influence. Marcus enjoyed being the center of attention. Then one of his associates approached carrying a tablet. "You should see this," the man said. Marcus glanced at the screen. Another article discussing the mysterious organization dominating industry conversations. He immediately lost interest. "Not this again." "It matters," the associate replied. Apparently, they turned down 3 major firms this week. Marcus shrugged. Good for them. One of those firms was larger than ours. That caught his attention. Only slightly. Marcus took the tablet and skimmed the article. The organization remained anonymous. No interviews. No public appearances. No executive profiles. Nothing. Yet somehow their influence continued growing. Marcus handed the tablet back. Everybody loves a mystery. His associate hesitated. "There is one more thing." "What?" "Several guests from that organization may be in the city this weekend." Marcus laughed. "Then maybe they can attend the wedding." The comment earned a few chuckles from nearby guests. The conversation moved on. Yet the timing bothered him more than he admitted. Too many unusual things seemed to be happening at once. The wedding, the Harbor Ridge situation, the private meeting, the mysterious organization. None of the pieces connected. At least not yet. Later that night, Monica left the library and walked through downtown streets illuminated by restaurant signs and office towers. The city felt different than it had years ago. Not because the buildings changed. Because she had changed. Her phone rang. She answered immediately. "Everything is ready," the familiar voice said. "Good," Monica replied. "There is one update." She remained silent. "The guest list has expanded." Monica looked ahead calmly. "Expected. Some important people have decided they want to be there." Monica smiled faintly. "Then they will be." A pause followed. "Are you nervous?" the voice asked. Monica considered the question carefully. "No, why not?" She looked toward the luxury hotel where Marcus's wedding would soon take place. Because the outcome was decided long before the invitation arrived. The call ended. Far above the city, lights continued glowing in office towers where powerful people made important decisions. Somewhere among those buildings, conversations about Monica were already happening. Conversations Marcus knew nothing about. Conversations involving people whose approval he would gladly spend years trying to earn. And as he finished another evening surrounded by admirers, he remained completely unaware that several of the most influential guests arriving in the city this weekend were not coming for his wedding at all. The morning before the wedding arrived with clear skies and a city buzzing with anticipation. Reporters discussed guest arrivals. Luxury vehicles moved in and out of hotel entrances. Social media filled with speculation about who would attend the weekend's biggest event. Marcus enjoyed every minute of it. From his office window, he looked down at the city and felt the familiar satisfaction that came from believing he had won. His company was successful. His wedding was hours away. His future seemed secure. Yet while he stood there admiring the skyline, he had no idea how close he had once come to being right about Monica. Because there had been a time when she almost disappeared completely. A time when every plan failed. A time when even she questioned whether continuing was worth the pain. Few people knew what happened after the divorce. They saw the aftermath, but not the struggle. They saw the years of hardship, but not the countless attempts to rebuild. What nobody knew was that Monica spent months applying for jobs she never received. Employers glanced at her resume and saw gaps they did not understand. Interviews ended with polite smiles and rejection emails. Savings vanished. Friends drifted away. Opportunities disappeared. One by one, doors closed. At first she believed persistence would solve everything. Then reality taught her otherwise. There were nights when she sat alone wondering whether Marcus had been right about her. Whether she truly had nothing left to offer. Whether the world had already decided her story was finished. The worst moment came nearly a year after the divorce. Monica had spent months developing an idea she hoped could become a fresh start. She worked wherever she could find space. Libraries, community centers, empty corners of coffee shops. Every small step forward required enormous effort. Eventually, she gathered enough support to present her proposal to a group that might help fund it. She arrived early, prepared, determined, hopeful. Then everything fell apart. The meeting lasted less than 30 minutes. Most of the people in the room barely listened. Some questioned her experience. Others questioned her credibility. One executive looked directly at her and asked a question she never forgot. Why should anyone trust someone who could not even keep her own life together? The room became silent. Monica answered professionally, calmly, respectfully. It made no difference. The proposal was rejected. By the time she stepped back onto the sidewalk, she felt something inside her breaking. For the first time, she seriously considered giving up. That night she sat alone in a small office borrowed from a non-profit organization. Rain tapped against the windows. Bills covered the desk. The future looked impossible. Monica stared at the city lights beyond the glass and wondered whether she had spent years fighting a battle she could never win. Her phone rang shortly after midnight. She almost ignored it. Instead, she answered. The conversation lasted only a few minutes. The person on the other end asked simple questions. Why did she start? What problem was she trying to solve? Why had she continued despite failing so many times? Monica answered honestly. When the call ended, she assumed nothing would come from it. She was wrong. That conversation changed everything. Not immediately. Not dramatically. There was no miracle. No overnight success. No sudden fortune. What came instead was something far more important. One person believed her. One person gave her another opportunity when nobody else would. One person looked beyond appearances and saw value. The road afterward remained difficult. There were setbacks, mistakes, delays, months when progress felt invisible. But she kept moving forward. Slowly, quietly, consistently. The world never noticed because the world was busy watching people like Marcus. Across town, Marcus reviewed final wedding schedules while guests continued arriving. Olivia excitedly discussed seating arrangements and media coverage. Everything appeared perfect. Yet even as the celebration approached, New reports about the mysterious organization continued appearing across industry circles. The company seemed to be expanding faster than analysts could explain. More importantly, influential people kept rearranging their schedules to attend a private gathering scheduled for the same day as the wedding. Marcus found the timing increasingly annoying. "I swear everybody is talking about them," Olivia said during lunch. Marcus shrugged. "People are obsessed with mysteries." "Do you think they are really that powerful?" she asked. Marcus laughed. "Nobody is that powerful." At nearly the same moment, Monica sat quietly inside a private car moving through downtown traffic. The city passed outside the window. Her phone buzzed. A message appeared on the screen. "All attendees confirmed." Monica read it carefully. Then another message arrived moments later. "Security protocols finalized." She locked the phone and looked out the window again. Calm, focused, certain. Years earlier, she had walked away from that failed presentation believing everything was over. Tomorrow would prove how wrong she had been. And somewhere in another part of the city, the person who had given her that second chance was preparing to make an appearance that would leave far more than Marcus surprised. The wedding day finally arrived. Long before sunrise, activity spread across the city. Luxury vehicles moved between hotels. Security teams checked entrances. Florists made final adjustments. Reporters gathered outside the venue hoping to capture photographs of high-profile guests. Everything appeared centered around Marcus and Olivia. Yet in private boardrooms and executive offices across the city, an entirely different event commanded attention. Invitations had been sent weeks earlier. Attendance had been confirmed under strict confidentiality. No media coverage. No public announcements. No interviews. Just a gathering of individuals whose decisions shaped industries. The location remained private. The purpose remained private. Most importantly, the identity of the person hosting the event remained private. Throughout the morning, influential figures quietly changed travel plans and rearranged schedules. Some delayed flights home. Others postponed meetings worth millions of dollars. One governor canceled a public appearance. A technology founder moved an international conference call. A real estate magnate postponed a closing ceremony. None of them did so for Marcus's wedding. Marcus, of course, knew none of this. He stood in a private suite overlooking the ballroom while assistants moved around him making final preparations. His tuxedo hung near the window. His phone buzzed constantly with messages from guests. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Yet one small irritation refused to disappear. The mysterious organization. Every time he opened a business publication, another article appeared. Every time he checked industry news, another rumor surfaced. Nobody knew who controlled it. Nobody knew who funded it. Nobody knew why so many powerful people seemed eager to earn its attention. "You are thinking about it again," Olivia said as she entered the room. Marcus glanced up. "Thinking about what?" "That company." He laughed. "Apparently, I am not the only one." Olivia sat beside him. "My father asked about them this morning." That surprised him. Olivia's father rarely discussed other businesses. "Why?" Marcus asked. He said people he respects seem very interested. Marcus frowned. The comment bothered him more than he expected. Not because he feared competition, because powerful people were behaving differently than usual. Their curiosity seemed personal, almost urgent. Before he could respond, another message appeared on his phone. It came from one of his advisors. "We confirmed additional attendees for the private gathering." Marcus opened the attachment. Several names immediately stood out. Leaders, investors, executives, individuals who rarely attended events without good reason. "This is getting ridiculous," he muttered. Olivia looked over his shoulder. Why would all these people show up for a private meeting? Marcus had no answer. Across the city, Monica sat quietly inside a private conference room. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the skyline. Several people occupied seats around the table, reviewing schedules and final arrangements. Nobody raised their voice. Nobody appeared nervous. The atmosphere reflected calm confidence. One man closed a folder and smiled. "Everything is ready." Monica nodded. Good. Another woman reviewed a digital tablet. Transportation teams are confirmed. Security teams are confirmed. Guest arrivals remain on schedule. Monica listened carefully. Even now, her name was never spoken unnecessarily. Discretion had become second nature to everyone involved. A younger executive looked toward her with curiosity. Do you ever regret staying invisible for so long? Monica smiled faintly. Visibility is useful only when the timing is right. The room fell quiet. Nobody questioned her answer. They had all witnessed what patience could accomplish. Years earlier, many people dismissed her. Some underestimated her. Others ignored her completely. Yet while the world focused on louder voices, Monica built something that did not require applause to grow. Her phone vibrated. A message appeared. Several wedding guests have arrived early. Monica locked the screen without comment. Meanwhile, luxury vehicles continued arriving at the hotel, hosting Marcus's ceremony. Guests stepped onto red carpets. Cameras flashed. Conversations filled hallways and lounges. Yet among those arriving, subtle patterns began emerging. Certain people checked their watches repeatedly. Others exchanged private messages. Several influential guests quietly informed staff they might leave earlier than expected. Nobody explained why. By late afternoon, Marcus noticed the first sign that something felt different. A respected investor approached him during a reception and offered congratulations. Then, almost immediately afterward, the man asked a question. Have you heard anything new about the organization hosting today's private gathering? Marcus stared at him. Not really. The investor nodded thoughtfully. Interesting. Then he walked away. Minutes later, someone else asked a similar question. Then another. Then another. By sunset, Marcus realized something uncomfortable. On the biggest day of his life, a surprising number of important people seemed more interested in someone they had never met than in the wedding itself. And as the ballroom lights illuminated the evening sky, the final guest list for that private gathering was quietly delivered to the event coordinator. She scanned the names once. Then her eyes widened. Because near the top of the list appeared a detail nobody outside a very small circle had been allowed to know. The anonymous host was finally expected to arrive in person. The ballroom buzzed with energy as the evening reached its peak. Crystal chandeliers reflected light across polished marble floors, while servers moved through the crowd carrying silver trays. Every table was filled with influential guests. Business leaders exchanged handshakes. Politicians posed for photographs. Reporters waited near designated media areas hoping to capture memorable moments. Marcus stood near the center of it all, accepting congratulations and enjoying the attention. This was exactly how he had imagined the night. Wealth, status, admiration, control. Yet beneath the celebration, an unusual tension continued spreading through the room. Certain guests checked their phones more often than normal. Others seemed distracted. Conversations repeatedly drifted toward the same mysterious subject. The private gathering, the anonymous host, the organization nobody could stop talking about. Marcus noticed it again when a venture capitalist interrupted a discussion about the wedding. Have you heard whether the host has arrived yet? The man asked another guest. Not yet, came the reply. But security has already been increased. Marcus frowned slightly. Increased security? For a private meeting? The idea seemed excessive. He tried to ignore it. Tonight was supposed to be about him. Across the ballroom, Olivia laughed with friends while photographers captured images for magazines and social media. Everything appeared perfect. Then one of the hotel managers hurried quietly through a side entrance and approached the head of security. The conversation lasted only a few seconds, but several people noticed the sudden change in posture. Earpieces were adjusted. Messages were exchanged. Staff members began moving with greater urgency. At first, nobody understood why. Then word started spreading. A motorcade had entered the district. Not one vehicle. Several. Black SUVs moving together with professional precision. The rumor traveled through the crowd faster than any official announcement. Who was arriving? Someone whispered. Maybe a governor. Maybe a foreign investor. Maybe someone from that organization. Marcus overheard the speculation and rolled his eyes. The city was full of wealthy people. Expensive vehicles meant nothing. Yet, even he noticed something unusual when several prominent guests excused themselves and moved toward the windows overlooking the entrance drive. Curiosity pulled more people in the same direction. Within minutes, dozens of guests were watching. Outside, hotel staff suddenly became noticeably alert. Valets stepped aside. Security personnel repositioned themselves. The atmosphere shifted. Not dramatically, subtly, but enough for experienced observers to recognize that someone important was expected. Marcus walked toward the windows. "What is everybody staring at?" he asked. Nobody answered immediately. Then headlights appeared at the far end of the private drive. One vehicle, then another, then another. The convoy moved smoothly through the entrance gates before slowing near the main arrival area. Conversations throughout the ballroom began fading. Even people who could not see the entrance sensed something was happening. Phones emerged. Guests moved closer. The first SUV stopped. Then the second. Then the third. Security personnel exited quickly and positioned themselves with quiet professionalism. No panic. No drama. Just confidence. The kind of confidence that comes from protecting someone important. Marcus folded his arms. He refused to join the excitement. Yet he could not stop watching. Neither could anyone else. Across the city, inside one of the vehicles, Monica sat calmly looking through the window. The lights of the hotel reflected against the glass. For a brief moment, memories surfaced. The apartment above the laundromat. The divorce papers. The shelter. The laughter. The whispers. The grocery store in the rain. The video that spread online. Every insult. Every dismissal. Every moment someone decided her value based on appearances. Then the memories faded. Not because they no longer mattered. Because they no longer controlled her. The vehicle slowed. A voice spoke softly through an earpiece from the front seat. "We have arrived." Monica nodded once. Nothing more. No speech. No celebration. Just quiet certainty. Outside, hundreds of eyes focused on the convoy. Inside the ballroom, Marcus felt an unfamiliar sensation. Not fear. Not yet. Something smaller. A slight discomfort he could not explain. The kind that appears when reality begins drifting away from expectations. Nearby, one guest glanced at his phone and suddenly looked shocked. "That cannot be right," he muttered. Another guest immediately demanded to see the screen. Moments later, more whispers spread. Nobody spoke loudly enough for Marcus to hear. Yet he could see the reactions. Surprise. Confusion. Anticipation. Then the rear door of the lead SUV opened. The entire entrance area seemed to pause. Cameras turned. Security personnel straightened. Conversation stopped. Inside the ballroom, dozens of guests pressed closer to the windows. Marcus narrowed his eyes. A figure began stepping out of the vehicle. For a split second, the angle prevented anyone from seeing clearly. Then the person turned toward the hotel lights. And the first expression Marcus wore was not recognition. It was disbelief. For several long seconds, nobody moved. The figure standing beside the SUV seemed familiar, yet impossible at the same time. Marcus blinked once, convinced his eyes were playing tricks on him. Then the woman stepped fully into the light. A ripple passed through the crowd. Conversations died mid-sentence. Camera flashes slowed. Even the hotel staff appeared momentarily distracted. Monica stood calmly at the entrance, dressed with understated elegance that drew attention precisely because it did not demand it. There were no dramatic gestures, no attempt to impress anyone, no sign of nervousness. She simply looked like someone who belonged exactly where she was. Marcus felt a strange tightening in his chest. This was not how he imagined the moment. For years he had pictured Monica arriving defeated, embarrassed, and uncertain. Instead, she looked composed, confident, untouchable. Olivia stared through the window in disbelief. "That is Monica?" she asked quietly. Marcus forced a laugh. Apparently, she found a decent dress. The joke fell flat. Nobody nearby laughed. Their attention remained fixed on the entrance. More doors opened along the convoy. Several professionally dressed men and women exited the vehicles. They were not bodyguards in the dramatic sense Marcus expected. They carried themselves like senior executives, advisors, and people accustomed to operating around power. Some guests immediately recognized faces from business magazines and international conferences. Whispers spread rapidly. "I know him. What is he doing here? She arrived with them? That cannot be right." Monica acknowledged no one as she began walking toward the entrance. Yet something even stranger happened. Before she reached the doors, two prominent guests already inside the hotel started moving toward her. Marcus recognized both immediately. One managed a billion-dollar investment group. The other advised several Fortune 500 companies. Neither man was known for chasing introductions. Yet both approached Monica first. Marcus frowned. "What are they doing?" No one answered. Across the lobby, Monica greeted them politely. The exchange lasted less than a minute. No dramatic reveal. No explanation. Yet the reaction afterward unsettled everyone watching. The two executives smiled with genuine respect before stepping aside to allow her through. Respect. Not pity. Not curiosity. Respect. The distinction mattered. Monica entered the hotel. A strange silence followed her. Guests who had spent months discussing her as a cautionary tale suddenly found themselves uncertain how to behave. Some looked away. Others stared openly. A few exchanged nervous glances. The confidence that had fueled so many jokes began fading. Marcus noticed it immediately. People were no longer reacting to Monica as though she were his unfortunate ex-wife. They were reacting as though they knew something he did not. That realization irritated him more than he cared to admit. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "She is still Monica." Yet even as he spoke, another unexpected moment unfolded. Near the grand staircase, a renowned technology founder crossed the room specifically to greet her. Several nearby guests recognized him instantly. The founder rarely attended social functions and almost never initiated conversations with strangers. Yet he shook Monica's hand warmly and spoke to her as though they had known each other for years. More whispers followed. More confusion. More questions. Marcus felt the first genuine wave of unease. Not fear. Not yet. But the certainty that had carried him through the evening began developing cracks. Across the ballroom, Monica remained calm. She greeted people politely, spoke briefly when approached, and never once tried to draw attention to herself. Ironically, that restraint made her impossible to ignore. Every interaction raised more questions. Every greeting deepened the mystery. Every respectful nod from a powerful guest challenged the narrative Marcus spent years building. Olivia moved closer to him. "Do you know these people?" she asked. "No, then why do they know her?" Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it again. For the first time all evening, he had no answer. Nearby, another guest checked his phone and suddenly went pale. "You have got to be kidding me," the man whispered. Within moments, several others gathered around his screen. Their expressions shifted from curiosity to astonishment. Marcus noticed immediately. "What now?" he asked. Nobody responded directly. Instead, one man simply stared toward Monica with a look that bordered on disbelief. Then, from across the ballroom, a distinguished older investor who rarely attended weddings at all began walking toward her. The room noticed. Conversation stopped. Phones lowered. Eyes followed him. Because this particular investor had a reputation for one thing above all else. He never approached anyone unless that person was already important. When he finally reached Monica, he smiled warmly and addressed her using a title that Marcus had never heard before. The words were quiet. Most guests could not hear them clearly. But Marcus saw Monica's reaction, and he saw the investor's unmistakable respect. In that moment, a question entered his mind that refused to leave. Not who Monica had become, but how much of her life he had completely failed to understand. And as the investor stepped aside, another even more influential figure started walking toward her. The next figure approaching Monica commanded attention the moment he entered the center of the ballroom. Conversations stopped almost instantly. Even people who did not recognize him understood from the reactions around them that he was someone important. Marcus recognized him immediately. Richard Halstead, one of the most respected investors in the country. A man whose approval could change the trajectory of entire companies. Richard rarely attended social events and almost never sought out introductions. Yet now he was crossing the ballroom directly toward Monica. The crowd watched in silence. Monica greeted him with the same calm professionalism she had shown everyone else. Richard smiled warmly. "It is good to finally see you in person again," he said. Monica nodded. "Thank you for coming. I would not have missed this." Several nearby guests exchanged confused looks. Again, not curiosity, not politeness. Respect. Genuine respect. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Richard spoke with Monica for another minute before stepping aside. Then another executive approached. Then another. Then another. Within minutes, a line had quietly formed around the woman many people in that room had spent years dismissing. Olivia stared at the scene in disbelief. "Marcus," she whispered, "what is happening?" He forced a laugh that sounded hollow even to himself. "I do not know." For the first time all evening, he was telling the truth. Near one of the ballroom entrances, several guests were now openly discussing Monica. How does she know all these people? Who exactly is she? Why are they treating her like that? The questions spread faster than answers. Then a voice broke through the growing noise. "Ladies and gentlemen." The room turned toward the ballroom stage. One of the event coordinators stood beside the microphone. Her expression suggested she had received unexpected instructions. "Before we continue tonight's celebration, we have been asked to make a brief acknowledgement regarding a special guest in attendance." Marcus frowned. He had approved no such announcement. Neither had Olivia. The coordinator glanced toward Monica. The crowd followed her gaze. A strange tension settled over the room. Many of you are aware of the organization that has recently become one of the most influential private investment groups in the country. Murmurs immediately erupted. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. The mysterious organization. The company. The meetings. The headlines. The endless conversations. The coordinator continued. For years, the identity of its founder and chairperson has remained private. The room grew completely silent. Every guest listened. Every camera turned. Every eye focused on the stage. Marcus suddenly felt a wave of anxiety he could not explain. The coordinator smiled gently. "Tonight, that privacy officially comes to an end." The silence became almost unbearable. Then she spoke the next sentence. "Please join me in recognizing the founder and chairperson of Horizon Legacy Group, Ms. Monica Bennett." For a moment, nobody moved. The words seemed impossible to process. Then the entire room erupted. Not with laughter, not with disbelief, with shock, genuine shock. Gasps echoed across the ballroom. Phones appeared instantly. Conversations exploded. Some guests stood up from their seats. Others stared openly at Monica as though seeing her for the first time. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. Horizon Legacy Group. The name hit him like a physical force. Every article, every report, every conversation, every business mystery that had consumed his attention for months. Monica. It was Monica. His mind rejected the idea immediately. Impossible. It made no sense. Yet everywhere he looked, reality confirmed it. Richard Halstead applauded. Several executives applauded. Influential investors applauded. One by one, more guests joined them. Not because they were being polite, because they already knew. Marcus realized with horror that many of the most powerful people in the room had known the truth long before he did. Monica remained composed. She did not smile triumphantly. She did not seek revenge. She simply acknowledged the applause with quiet grace. That somehow made the moment even worse for Marcus. She was not acting like someone who had won a battle. She was acting like someone who no longer needed one. Olivia looked at him. "You knew?" Marcus could barely speak. "No." Across the ballroom, guests who had mocked Monica earlier now avoided eye contact. The jokes suddenly felt dangerous. The laughter suddenly felt embarrassing. Every cruel comment made over the years seemed to return all at once. Marcus remembered the grocery store, the rain, the public remarks, the wedding invitation, the private jokes, the confidence, the certainty. Piece by piece, the story he had built about Monica collapsed in front of him. Yet even then, part of him refused to accept it. "There has to be some mistake," he whispered. But there was no mistake. Screens throughout the ballroom suddenly displayed information prepared for the announcement. Articles, awards, projects, investments, philanthropic initiatives, economic development programs. Everything connected to Horizon Legacy Group. Everything connected to Monica. The room watched in astonishment. Marcus watched in horror. And as the final image appeared on the screen behind the stage, he realized something even more devastating. The woman he had spent years treating like a failure had not merely rebuilt her life. She had quietly become more influential than he could ever hope to be. For Marcus, the applause felt endless. Every clap echoed like a reminder of how completely he had misunderstood the woman standing across the ballroom. Guests who had spent years praising him now surrounded Monica. Executives waited patiently for a chance to speak with her. Investors who once ignored her presence now treated every word she spoke as valuable. The shift happened so quickly that it almost felt unreal. Yet nothing about it was sudden. Monica had spent years building toward this moment, while Marcus was busy celebrating victories that suddenly seemed much smaller. Olivia stood beside him in stunned silence. The excitement she had carried throughout the evening had disappeared completely. "Why did nobody tell us?" she finally asked. Marcus could not answer. The truth was painfully simple. Nobody told them because nobody considered it their information to share. They assumed Monica's accomplishments spoke for themselves. Meanwhile, Marcus had spent so many years believing his own version of reality that he never thought to question it. Across the ballroom, Monica continued speaking with guests. Her calmness made the contrast even sharper. She was not boasting. She was not humiliating anyone. She was not seeking revenge. If anything, she seemed more interested in listening than speaking. That quiet confidence unsettled Marcus more than anger ever could have. Because anger would have meant she still needed something from him. She clearly did not. A group of investors approached Monica and congratulated her on a recent development project that had revitalized several struggling communities. Another executive thanked her for funding educational programs that created thousands of scholarships. A nonprofit leader praised her organization's support during a difficult economic period. One after another, examples appeared. Not just wealth, impact, influence, respect earned over years of work. Marcus felt as though he were watching an entirely different person. Yet deep down, he knew that was not true. The woman standing there had always existed. He simply failed to see her. The realization hurt more than he expected. Then came the moment that truly shattered him. Richard Halstead returned to the stage and addressed the room once more. "Many people know Horizon Legacy Group because of its business success," he said. "What fewer people know is that Monica personally insisted on keeping her name hidden so that the work would receive attention instead of the founder." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Richard smiled. That decision probably cost her countless opportunities for recognition. She never seemed concerned about that. More applause followed. Marcus lowered his eyes. He remembered every interview where he eagerly accepted praise, every article highlighting his accomplishments, every event where he positioned himself at the center of attention. Monica had achieved far more and never demanded recognition. Suddenly his own success felt different. Smaller, less impressive. Nearby, several guests who had laughed at Monica during earlier gatherings now avoided conversation entirely. Some quietly left the ballroom. Others pretended to be occupied with their phones. Nobody wanted to revisit old jokes. Nobody wanted to explain their behavior. The social balance had shifted completely. Earlier in the evening, Monica entered as the woman everyone expected to pity. Now she was the person everyone wanted to impress. Marcus noticed every reaction, every awkward glance, Every uncomfortable silence. Every subtle attempt by people to distance themselves from things they once found amusing. He realized something painful. The crowd had not truly changed. They simply followed status. Years ago they laughed because he laughed. Tonight they admired Monica because influential people admired Monica. The realization left him feeling strangely alone. Eventually, he found himself walking toward her. The distance felt longer than it should have. Memories resurfaced with every step. The apartment above the laundromat. The sacrifices she made. The encouragement she offered. The opportunities she gave up. He had buried those memories beneath years of pride. Now they returned all at once. Monica noticed him approaching. Her expression remained calm. Not cold. Not warm. Simply calm. Marcus stopped a few feet away. For several seconds neither spoke. Finally he looked at her and said the only honest thing he could manage. "I did not know." Monica studied him quietly. "No," she replied. "You did not." The words were not cruel. They were worse. They were true. Marcus swallowed hard. "I never imagined," his voice faded. Monica waited. "You never imagined I could build something without you," she said gently. Marcus looked down. He wanted to argue, wanted to explain, wanted to defend himself. Instead, he discovered there was nothing left to say. Every excuse sounded hollow. Every justification felt meaningless. The evidence surrounded them. Not on a screen. Not in a report. In real life. Monica had built a future while he spent years looking backward through his own arrogance. Across the ballroom, the celebration continued. Yet Marcus barely heard it anymore. For the first time, he fully understood the scale of what he had lost. Not money. Not influence. Not status. Something far more valuable. And as Monica turned to greet another guest, Marcus experienced a feeling he had avoided for years. Genuine regret. Because he finally understood that the greatest mistake of his life was never leaving Monica behind. It was failing to recognize who she truly was before she walked away forever. The ballroom remained alive with conversation long after the shock had settled. Guests continued approaching Monica. Some wanted introductions. Others wanted meetings. Many simply wanted to stand near the woman whose story had transformed the entire evening. Yet Monica seemed untouched by the attention. She thanked people politely, listened carefully, smiled when appropriate, then moved on. Marcus watched it all from a distance. Hours earlier, he had stood at the center of the room, believing he controlled the narrative. Now he felt like a spectator observing a story he no longer understood. The realization hurt in ways he never expected. Not because Monica was successful, not because she was respected, because he finally understood how blind he had been. Throughout their marriage, he believed he was the ambitious one, the visionary, the builder. Yet every memory now appeared different. Monica had always possessed strength. She had always possessed intelligence. She had always possessed resilience. The difference was that she never needed an audience to prove it. Marcus lowered himself into a chair near the edge of the ballroom. Around him, guests continued celebrating. Yet he felt strangely isolated. The laughter sounded distant. The music sounded muted. For the first time in years, success offered him no comfort. Across the room, Monica stepped away from a conversation and moved toward one of the large windows overlooking the city. Beyond the glass, lights stretched across the skyline. The same city that had once watched her struggle now glowed beneath the future she built for herself. She stood there quietly for several moments, not reliving old pain, not celebrating victory, simply appreciating how far she had come. A familiar voice interrupted her thoughts. "You really did it." Monica turned. Marcus stood a few feet away. He looked older than he had earlier that evening. Not physically, emotionally. The certainty that once defined him had disappeared. Monica studied him calmly. "Yes," she replied. Marcus nodded slowly. "I spent years believing I knew exactly who you were. I know. I was wrong." Monica said nothing. The silence forced him to continue. "When I saw you after the divorce, when I saw you struggling, I convinced myself it proved something." His voice tightened. "I thought it proved I was right." Monica looked out toward the city again. People usually see what they expect to see. Marcus swallowed hard. I should have treated you better. It was not a grand apology, not a dramatic speech, just a simple truth finally spoken aloud. Monica nodded. Yes, you should have. The honesty landed harder than anger ever could have. Marcus lowered his eyes. There was no argument left. No defense. No explanation. Years earlier, he had chosen pride over gratitude, status over loyalty, appearances over character. Tonight, he was finally paying the emotional cost of those choices. Nearby, Olivia watched the conversation from a distance. For the first time, she seemed to understand that the real story of the evening was never the wedding itself. It was the woman everyone underestimated. Eventually, Marcus looked back at Monica. Do you ever think about what might have happened if things were different? Monica smiled softly. Not bitterly. Not sadly. Peacefully. No, Marcus blinked. No. The life I have now exists because I stopped looking backward. The answer settled between them. Simple. Final. Marcus realized then that he had spent years assuming he would always occupy an important place in Monica's story. The truth was far more painful. She had moved beyond the chapter that included him, not out of anger, out of growth. The realization completed what regret had started. Some losses cannot be repaired. Some opportunities do not return. Some people only recognize value after it is gone. Monica offered a polite nod. Take care of yourself, Marcus. Then she turned and walked away. No dramatic farewell. No final revenge. No humiliation. She did not need any of those things. Because true victory was not making Marcus feel small. True victory was no longer needing his approval. Across the ballroom, several influential guests prepared to leave alongside Monica. Conversations paused as she made her way toward the exit. People greeted her respectfully. Some thanked her for coming. Others spoke about future projects and upcoming meetings. The atmosphere surrounding her felt completely different from the one she faced when she arrived. Earlier, many expected a spectacle. Instead, they witnessed something far more powerful. Dignity. As Monica reached the entrance, the doors opened and the cool night air drifted inside. Beyond them waited the same city that had seen her at her lowest. But she was not the same woman anymore. She stepped outside without looking back. The vehicles waiting for her quietly pulled forward. Several guests watched from the windows as she departed. Among them stood Marcus. He remained motionless long after the convoy disappeared from view. For the first time, he understood that success was not measured by headlines, wealth, or applause. It was measured by character. And in that lesson, Monica had become richer than anyone in the room. The city lights reflected across the glass as Marcus stood alone with his thoughts. The celebration continued around him, but it no longer felt like his moment. That belonged to someone else now. The woman he once dismissed. The woman he once underestimated. The woman who rebuilt her life without asking permission from anyone. And somewhere beyond the city skyline, Monica moved forward toward a future she had earned one difficult step at a time, carrying with her the one thing Marcus could never take away again. Her dignity.